Hey there, I thought I'd take a moment to introduce myself before I get started. My name is Jen, and I'm a mom to two toddlers. I'm a former second grade teacher. I taught in Honduras for 8 years and now reside in Pennsylvania. I develop curriculum now primarily for elementary ELA, and I am a TPT author, and you can find my store. It's ELA Skill Builder, and my website is listed there too, elaskillbuilder.com. So I want to start out by asking why you are attending this workshop. I'm guessing it's for one of the following reasons. Perhaps your current grammar curriculum doesn't seem to be helping your students become better writers. You are not alone. I used curriculums for years that my students would do well on with the worksheets and activities provided by the curriculum, but they would not transfer those skills to their writing. Or you want to be the best teacher you can be and learn current research-based strategies for teaching grammar effectively. I'm assuming you are a pretty great teacher if you are watching this workshop right now. And you want to give your students the education they deserve rather than be limited by a curriculum that isn't super effective. So my guess is that you can relate to all of these reasons, and if you can, then you are definitely in the right spot. This workshop is called a 5-day grammar routine proven to enhance student writing. In this workshop, you will learn two main things. You will learn research behind why teaching grammar in context is necessary for seeing improvement in our students' writing. And you also get some practical and repeatable mini lessons you can use to teach any grammar skill in the context of writing. So in the past, I would use a lot of these type of activities that you see here to introduce or have my students practice grammar skills. So here's an example for proper nouns. I would maybe introduce proper nouns with a song or a video. I would have students practice proper nouns with worksheets where they have to find the proper noun that's not capitalized and capitalize it correctly in the blank, or a center activity where they sort common and proper nouns. And although these are all super great activities and engaging for students, and my students would do great on them and perform well, and I'd think they understood proper nouns, I'd find that when I looked at their writing, they weren't using proper nouns, or maybe they were using them but weren't capitalizing them. And I just didn't find that the grammar skills we were teaching and practicing were transferring to their writing. And that's when I knew I had to find a better way to teach grammar that would ensure application of skills to my students' writing. So it's important to always remember our goal for teaching grammar. And I'm assuming for you, it is like for me, to help our students become better writers and more effective communicators. And we need to make sure that all of our grammar instruction is oriented around this goal to help our students become better writers. And if the activities we're using aren't helping our students achieve this goal, then we can probably ditch them or at least minimize how many of those activities we're doing. So there are two different approaches that you can have when you're teaching grammar. There's an isolated approach and an integrated approach to teaching grammar. So let me explain the characteristics of each. In an isolated approach, grammar is taught as a separate subject from reading and writing. Grammar terms and rules are taught at the beginning of a grammar lesson. Grammar instruction primarily consists of skill practice with workbooks, games, and other activities where students correct grammatical errors. And grammar is assessed by having students identify or correct errors or through multiple choice tests. In an integrated approach to teaching grammar, grammar instruction is integrated into your writing block. Students discover grammar terms and rules by observing them in writing. Grammar instruction primarily consists of authentic writing activities where students are applying grammar skills, and grammar is assessed with authentic assessments where students apply targeted grammar skills in a written response. So which approach do you think you use more in your classroom? If you're anything like me, you've probably used more of an isolated approach. I did this for years and I realized it wasn't totally effective, and that's when I learned through my research that an integrated approach is definitely more beneficial for seeing application of grammar skills in our students' writing. Let me explain some of the problems with an isolated approach to teaching grammar. First of all, research has found that it hinders learners' abilities to see how grammar is used for communication, which remember is our whole goal for teaching grammar in the first place. Drills using isolated sentences often eliminate the context of grammar within writing, which can make learning grammar irrelevant to students. Correcting grammatically flawed sentences reinforces bad writing by etching wrongness into students' minds. And this one especially stands out to me because if you think about your grammar exercises, a lot of them are asking students to correct errors in their writing. But this can actually have a negative effect of reinforcing bad writing rather than showing how grammar is used to enhance writing. The benefits of an integrated approach, according to research, is that embedding grammar within authentic writing can maximize grammar development. Embedding grammar instruction in the context of writing helps learners effectively comprehend the structures and rules of language because they are seeing how it is used in the context of writing. And students learn to see grammar as a meaning-making resource for them to draw upon when writing. So it's very important that our students see how grammar is a tool to add meaning and clarity to writing. It's purposeful, and we really want to communicate that to our students. It's not just a bunch of exercises where we correct sentences, but rather grammar is a tool that authors use to enhance their writing and make meaning more clear to their readers. So now the question becomes, how do we practically teach and assess grammar skills in the context of writing? And now I'm going to explain the 5-day routine that you can use to teach any grammar skill. And each day of this routine only takes 10 to 15 minutes and is super easy to implement. So here's a visual flow chart of the 5-day grammar routine. On day 1, you would introduce the skill with a mentor sentence. On day 2, you would create an anchor chart to explain the skill. On day 3, your students would practice the skill by writing imitation sentences. On day 4, you would reinforce the skill with a supplemental activity like boom cards. And day 5, you would have your students revise and edit the skill and then assess for the skill. So each of these mini lessons, again, only takes 10 to 15 minutes, takes 5 days to work through one skill, and then you move on and use the same routine for the next grammar skill you're teaching. Now I'm going to give a breakdown of what each day of the routine would look like. So on day 1, you would introduce your grammar skill with a mentor sentence. You may be wondering, what is a mentor sentence? A mentor sentence is a short text taken from quality writing, usually 1 to 2 sentences long, that models a targeted grammar skill. So for example, if you're teaching proper nouns, you'd probably choose a sentence with proper nouns from a book that is at grade level. Research repeatedly states why using mentor sentences is really beneficial for introducing grammar skills. First, focusing on good writing rather than bad writing helps to shift the focus towards what good writers do well and away from the mistakes made by poor writers. This makes a lot of sense. Instead of reinforcing errors in writing, we want to focus on quality writing and how authors are using grammar to enhance their writing. Mentor sentences model how grammar skills are used to make meaning and improve the craft of writing. And you'll see this in some of the examples I give in a moment. Using mentor sentences offer an inquiry approach for students to notice grammar rules. Again, I will model how you can use this inquiry approach. And mentor sentences encourage and inspire students to imitate the example text using their own ideas. There are 4 steps that you need to take in this mini lesson. First, choose a mentor sentence from a book at grade level that showcases the targeted grammar skill. Step 2, ask students what they notice in the mentor sentence and eventually draw attention to the targeted grammar skill. In step 3, compare and contrast the mentor sentence with an imitation sentence. In step 4, learn a focus phrase that students can apply in their writing. And now I'm going to demonstrate how you would implement this mini lesson. So let's say I am teaching a lesson on proper nouns. So I have selected this mentor sentence from Mr. Tannen's Tie Trouble. It could be used for probably 1st, 2nd, or 3rd grade. And I chose this mentor sentence because it has a couple proper nouns in it, a name of a person, a name of a place, and it also has a common noun. So we can differentiate common and proper nouns. So the first thing I would do to start this 5-day lesson and this first mini lesson is to read this mentor sentence to my students. And I could read it once by myself and then have them read it with me. So I would say, Mr. Tannen is the principal of the Lyndhurst Elementary School. And then I would simply ask my students, what do you notice in this sentence? And you might need to prompt the first couple times you're teaching this mini lesson. You might need to say, what do you notice about the punctuation or capitalization or What kinds of words is the author using? You might need to prompt the first couple times you do this routine. So then you would just allow your students to share anything that they notice. And this is fun because you can talk about other grammar rules too. So let's say one student says, I noticed there's a period at the end. Great. Yes, good authors use periods at the end of statements, sentences that tell something. Good. What else do you notice? Yes, there is a period after Mr. Why do you think there's a period there? It's not the end of a sentence. Yeah, because it's a shortened form of Mr. It's called an abbreviation. When you have abbreviations, you use a period. And then you could say, what else do you notice? Yeah, Mr. Tannen is capitalized, but principal is not. Good. Why do you think Mr. Tannen is capitalized, but principal is not? Yeah, it's because Mr. Tannen is a name of a specific person and principal is not a specific name. So when we have a specific name, it's called a proper noun. And proper nouns are special because they name specific people or places, so they need capital letters to make them stand out to their readers. But principal is just called a common noun. It's not a specific name, so it doesn't need a capital letter to stand out. What else do you notice? Yep, Lyndhurst Elementary School is capitalized. Very good. Why do you think that is capitalized? Yes, because it's a specific name of a place. Remember, that's called a proper noun. If it just said school, that would be a common noun, but because it has the name of the school, it is a proper noun. Good. Why do you think authors use proper nouns in their writing? And then you could talk about how it makes the writing more specific and meaningful. You could even compare and say, what would this sentence be like if I said the man is the principal of the school? Yeah, that'd be kind of boring. It wouldn't be clear who's the principal, what school you're at. It helps the reader understand exactly who we're talking about and what school we're talking about. It makes the writing more clear and meaningful. And now you can see how these mentor sentences are helping students to see how grammar is adding meaning and clarity to authors' writing. Right after that, you would project an imitation sentence under the mentor sentence. And this is one that I wrote. An imitation sentence simply is just a sentence that is similar in structure to the mentor sentence and also applies the same skill. So I wrote my imitation sentence as Mrs. Nace is the librarian at Elizabethtown Public Library. And then I just asked my students, okay, how are these two sentences similar and different? And then your students would notice things like, well, there's also a name, Mrs. Nace. Yep, and they're capitalized because it's a specific name. Yeah, what are those specific names called again? Yes, proper nouns. And what do we need to remember about proper nouns? Yep, they need capital letters. Good, what else do you notice? Yeah, librarian does not need a capital because it's not a specific name. Good. Elizabethtown Public Library is capitalized. Why? Because it's the name of a specific library. Good, and we need to capitalize that because it's a proper noun. What else do you notice? Yeah, just like the mentor sentence, it's a statement and ends with a period. And we notice there's also an abbreviation. It's a shortened form of Mrs., so we have a period there to show that it's an abbreviation. So you can see how this is helping to deepen students' understanding of proper nouns by comparing and contrasting these two sentences. And it's also reinforcing other grammar skills you may have taught, like statements and abbreviations, or introducing new ones you haven't taught yet, which is totally fine. It's great to just have these conversations where students are talking about all sorts of ways that authors use grammar to enhance their writing. Finally, you would end this first mini lesson by teaching a focus phrase. A focus phrase is simply just a phrase you would teach your students that they would be able to immediately apply in their writing. It's a very practical, actionable statement that they can apply right away. So in this case, I chose this focus phrase for proper nouns. I use capitals for names of people and places. You can see I don't even have the term proper nouns in this focus phrase because my goal is not so much that my students know what a proper noun is, it's that they are using names of people and places, that they're using capitals for these names. I think by using this kind of language that is easier to understand, your students are more likely to know and apply the grammar skill. The second mini lesson, you would create an anchor chart to explain the skill. An anchor chart is a poster that is created for a targeted grammar skill. So you would make an anchor chart for every single grammar skill you're teaching. So in my case with proper nouns, I would make an anchor chart just for proper nouns. And the anchor chart should include terms, definitions, rules, and the focus phrase for the skill, as well as examples where the grammar skill is applied in written sentences. So why use anchor charts? Well, research says that anchor charts enhance students' comprehension and retention of grammar skills, especially when they're co-created with your students. Also, they serve as visual reminders to your students that they can refer to continuously until they're retained and owned. Here are the steps for this Day 2 mini lesson. First, collaborate with your students as you create an anchor chart that includes defined terms, rules, focus phrase, and example sentences for the targeted grammar skill. And then step 2, with your students watching, post the anchor chart in the classroom. Encourage your students to refer to it as they write. So let me model how you would implement this mini lesson. I created a skeleton of the anchor chart to save time with my students, but you could definitely start from scratch with your students as well. So I would just go over everything I included. So I would first say, okay, this week we are learning about proper nouns, and then talk about the definition of that skill. Yeah, proper nouns name people and places, specific names of people and places, and they always begin with a capital letter. So who can think of a specific name of a person? Good, Mrs. Smith. Remember, we need a capital to show that it's a specific name, and I have my period because it's an abbreviation. Can someone think of another one? Yep, Julia, capital J. Okay, Dr. Brown. Doctor, I can abbreviate and do a period there. Dr. Brown. Good. Who can think of a name of a place? How about a name of a restaurant that you like? Wendy's. Great. Remember, that's a name of a specific restaurant. You need a capital. Can anyone think of a name of a city? Yes, Orlando. Remember that capital again because it's a specific name. Can anyone think of a name of a specific state? Yes, Arizona. Very good. And then you would fill out that chart. And then you'd review your focus phrase here. I use capitals for names of people and places. All right, great. Let's write some example sentences together as a class to show how we can use capitals for names of people and places in our writing. Okay, who can think of a sentence here? Great, Julia has a burger at Wendy's. Very good, and you included two proper nouns there, Julia and Wendy's, and then remember to end your sentence with a period. Okay, so you can see how this would be a visual reminder now for your students. If they are writing and you want to remind them to use proper nouns, they can refer to this anchor chart and see how authors use proper nouns in their writing. On day 3, you would have your students practice the skill by writing imitation sentences. Remember, an imitation sentence is a sentence that closely resembles a mentor sentence in terms of structure and usage of a particular grammar skill. So earlier, my mentor sentence was Mr. Tannen is the principal of the Lyndhurst Elementary School, and my imitation sentence was Mrs. Nace is the librarian at the Elizabethtown Public Library. So you can see how I changed out some of the words, but the overall structure is the same. Why use imitation sentences? Well, writing imitation sentences provides a guided and practical application of grammar skills in students' writing. So earlier in my career, when I would have my students practice a grammar skill, I would likely pull out the workbook or a center activity and have students correct errors or sort or whatever, activities like that. And that is just not super useful because they're not getting that guided practice for how to apply the skill in writing. So this activity is just much more authentic. What you're doing is you're offering that guided practice and how to write sentences that include that targeted grammar skill. And this is really preparing your students now to be able to go ahead and apply this grammar skill in their own independent writing. Here are the steps for this mini lesson. Step 1, project the mentor sentence that you used to introduce the skill on day 1. Review the focus phrase. Step 2, model how to write an imitation sentence that resembles the mentor sentence. In step 3, invite students to write imitation sentences as a whole class in pairs or independently, then celebrate their writing. So let me show you how to implement this lesson. So I would start this mini lesson by showing our mentor sentence again. Mr. Tannen is the principal of the Lyndhurst Elementary School, and review how good authors use capitals for names of people and places, our focus phrase, and then say, okay, together we're going to write an imitation sentence that is similar to this sentence here. So can anyone think of a name of a specific person? Good, Dr. Brown. Remember those capitals because it's a name. Yep, is the doctor. Doctor does not need a capital. It's a common noun. It does not name the specific doctor. At the Hershey Medical Center. That is a name of a hospital, so we are going to include capitals for all of those words. It's a proper noun. Good. All right, that is a great imitation sentence, and now you are prepared to write your own imitation sentences that have proper nouns. Then you would explain that it's their chance to write their own imitation sentences. They can do this in partners, or they can do it independently. You could have them write their sentences on whiteboards or on sentence strips, or you could create a worksheet for that. And you'd probably just want to have them write 2 to 4 imitation sentences, maybe set a timer, and that should only take probably 5 to 10 minutes. With my students, I like to use an imitation sentences worksheet that I already have pre-made, and I just put the mentor sentence in a box there, and then the students can write imitation sentences below. And this keeps it nice and organized for them. And some weeks I would have my students do this exercise in pairs, and other weeks I'd have them do it independently. And the last part of this mini lesson is celebrating students' imitation sentences and observing how they correctly use capitals for names of people and places. So perhaps you'd want to go back to that worksheet that you just did on imitation sentences and put some of your students' worksheets under a document camera and just really celebrate how students use proper nouns and specific names of people and places and discuss what they were and just really give each other positive feedback and encouragement about how they use proper nouns in their writing. Or maybe instead of a document camera, you could have your students partner up and share their sentences and give each other positive feedback. You could invite another class to come in to share them with. However you want to celebrate, just make sure you really make a big deal that your students are applying the targeted grammar skill in their writing. Okay, now on day 4, you would reinforce the skill with supplemental activities. So supplemental activities are isolated activities that are used to reinforce grammar skills, such as worksheets, station activities, songs, videos, interactive whiteboard activities, competitions, games, boom cards. Now, I know at the beginning I said an isolated approach is not the best way to teach grammar, but it doesn't mean you have to ditch all your activities and worksheets that you have. It just means that you need to be thoughtful about when you assign those types of activities. And at this point in the routine, it would be a good time to assign a supplemental activity because your students have the conceptual understanding and now they are ready to just practice and master the skill through drill-like activities. And that's where boom cards or worksheets are good for just drilling and helping students really master a grammar skill. So there definitely is a place for them. You just don't need to overuse them. I think just this one day or, maybe over a couple of station activities, that would be more than enough. You want to make sure your main focus is having your students apply the grammar skill in writing. This is just extra reinforcement. There is some research that supports that supplemental activities are valuable. A lot of the research says that it needs to occur within instruction that is primarily integrated and interactive, like I just talked about. Also, these types of activities are useful to help students achieve skill mastery, like I mentioned, And they're especially helpful for concepts that require memorization or recognition of specific words. So we all know that there's just certain skills and rules that students just need to memorize and repeatedly practice. So that's where these type of activities can be really, really helpful. These are the steps you would take for this mini lesson. First, find a supplemental activity that reinforces the grammar skill you're teaching, and then assign it. Very simple. So my favorite supplemental activity are boom cards. Boom cards are digital and interactive flashcards that you can assign online, and I absolutely love them because I'm totally over printing and laminating and cutting center activities. This is just so easy, and my students love them. They're engaging, they're self-checking, they really help with students achieving mastery of skills, so they are great for reinforcing skills. So in this exercise on proper nouns, students would have to identify the proper noun that is missing a capital letter. So yes, this is an error-based activity, but remember we are doing this after we have taught a conceptual understanding of proper nouns and they've applied it in writing. So now is a more appropriate time to do more of an error correcting activity like this. So let me just show you the sample boom deck here to see what students would be doing.
Whoops. Whoops.
All right, we are on our last mini lesson. On day 5, you would have your students revise and edit for the targeted skill, and then you would assess the skill. Just to remind you, revising is improving your draft by changing or adding details, in this case related to the targeted grammar skill. That's what we are going to be revising for, just the targeted grammar skill. And then editing is improving your draft by checking for grammatical errors such as capitalization and punctuation. So why revise and edit? Well, the revision stage offers a very practical opportunity for discussing how grammar can improve writing. And revising and editing ensures direct application of skills and cultivates a habit of rereading and rewriting. So you'll just naturally see how teaching grammar works the best in the revising stage because it's all about improving their writing. So you can talk about how to improve their draft with the targeted grammar skill you're teaching them. Step 1 of this mini lesson would be to project a written draft that needs to be improved upon. It could be a past draft or a current draft. It doesn't have to be completed. And then model the revising and editing process with a checklist. Then invite your students to revise and edit their own current or prior written piece with the revising and editing checklist. All right, let me demonstrate how you would implement this mini lesson. So first you would want to select a draft that you've been modeling for your students. It can be a past draft that you've modeled or it can be a current one. Definitely doesn't need to be the whole piece. It can just be a section. You want to keep the modeling part about 5 minutes long probably. And then I have created a revising and editing checklist that is all about proper nouns because it is so much more helpful for our students to just have one targeted grammar skill you're revising and editing for. I used to have the tendency of putting like 10 items on my revising checklist where they had to check all these different things that I've taught them throughout the year already, but that can be overwhelming and just unfair to expect all that of our students. So it's best to just simplify your revising and editing checklist to only include items that you've taught them that week. So this is focused on grammar. You could also include some other items that are more related to the genre you're teaching. But here I just have all my items related to proper nouns. So the first thing on my revising checklist I would model is to read my writing. At Christmas, my family went to Canada to visit my Aunt Rachel and my cousins Kira and Kaylin. We had so much fun. Then it says highlight my names of people. If there are none, add one. Okay, I got Aunt Rachel and I have Kira and Kaylin. Okay, I don't need to add any. Highlight my names of places. If there are none, add one. Okay, I got Canada. Good. So I have already used proper nouns in my writing. That's great. Now my editing checklist, check that each proper noun has a capital. Canada, I forgot. So I'm going to put 3 little lines. Aunt Rachel is good, Kira is good, and Kaylin is good. and check that each sentence begins with a capital and ends with a period. Okay, at Christmas, yeah, visit my Rachel and my cousins Karen and Kaylin. Yeah, yes, had so much fun. Oh, I forgot an end mark. I'll use an exclamation point. All right, I have completed that. All right, and now you would ask your students to use the same checklist to revise and edit their own reading. The last thing we need to do is assess our students for application of the targeted grammar skill. So when I used to assess grammar skills, it was most often multiple choice questions or questions where they had to identify and correct errors. And like I said before, they might do well on these assessments, but then they wouldn't apply these same skills into their writing. So I found them to be pointless, and research actually confirms that those types of assessments are not that valuable. Rather, research repeatedly states the importance of authentic assessments for assessing pretty much anything, including grammar. Authentic assessments engage students in relevant, meaningful tasks, in this case writing, that are useful for the real world. Why use authentic assessments? Well, they more accurately assess students' abilities to apply grammar in their writing, which is the main goal of our grammar instruction. So you can see here in this picture that students are going to be writing actual sentences that apply the targeted grammar skill. This is more authentic. This is actually assessing if our students can apply the grammar skill in their writing. Step 1 of this mini lesson is to create a writing prompt with specific criteria related to the targeted grammar skill and create a rubric to assess the criteria. Step 2, distribute the prompt and rubric, go over the rubric's criteria, and students complete assessments. And then finally, have students self-grade with the rubric or grade the assessment yourself. Record the grade and determine next steps. So let me demonstrate for you this authentic assessment on proper nouns. I have created a writing prompt that says, write one sentence about a teacher, your teacher, use the capital. Write one sentence about a friend, use the capital. Write one sentence about a place you like to go to, use the capital. And begin each sentence with a capital and end with an end mark. So you can see my writing prompt is geared towards my students using a proper noun in every sentence. So in first grade, it could just be really simple, like Mrs. Smith is nice. Okay, you don't need to have super high expectations here. As long as they have a complete sentence, use the proper noun. Maybe for a third or fourth grader, you would want them to write a slightly more detailed sentence. So write a sentence about a friend. I like to play tag with Ava at recess. A little more detail. All right. And then at the end, you can have your students self-assess with a rubric if you think they are able to do that. And this just gives more accountability and self-monitoring skills. So they would check, yeah, I have 3 complete sentences with a capital and end mark. Each sentence has a proper noun that is capitalized. And then the teacher would check over their grading and see if they agree with it, give them their scores. So yeah, I agree, 6 out of 6. And then down here, I just have a little section where if they mastered the skill, like got a 5 or 6 out of 6, you would circle the 3. If they got maybe 3 or 4 out of 6, they need a little bit more independent practice on proper nouns. And then if they got a 0, 1, or 2 out of 6, they need intervention with the teacher, some reteaching. So in this case, she mastered the skill, so I'm going to circle a 3, and she is ready to move on. Then I would input the student's level of mastery in this recording chart. It's just a one-sheet recording chart that has all the lessons and all my students' names. And then I put the number for how well they mastered the skill from the assessment. So Avery mastered proper nouns, so she got a 3. Jessica only got 4 out of 6, so she got a 2. She needs a little more practice. Miguel got a 3. Joseph got a 1 because he only got 1 out of 6 on his assessment. He needs more intervention. And then you can just get a quick visual of seeing what students need reteaching, what students may just need an extra worksheet or center activity or homework, and which students are ready to go and have mastered the concept. So that is it for the 5-day grammar routine. As you can see, it's pretty simple to implement. Each mini lesson only takes about 10 to 15 minutes to teach. If you're interested, I have created full year grammar curriculums that includes all the resources you need to teach 30 grammar skills for each grade level, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. So yes, each curriculum includes 6 units and 30 lessons that are Common Core aligned. They apply the 5-day routine for 30 grammar skills, and these curriculums include all the materials and assessments that you would need for the entire year. Included in each curriculum would be a scope and sequence with 6 units and 30 lessons that also include the focus phrases and the standards that are targeted. You would get a 5-day lesson template that would be used to teach each grammar skill. It includes the 5-day routine I taught you. And then the Google Slides, you would get 450 of them for your whole curriculum. That would include all your mentor sentences, compare and contrast. You'd have your revising and editing checklist to project, your assessments, all of those would be included. Then you would also get an anchor chart for each skill, so 30 anchor charts, and it would provide that skeleton that you can fill out with your students. You would get 30 imitation sentence worksheets. You would get 30 boom decks that can be assigned on boomlearning.com, and those would be free if you are purchasing this whole curriculum. You don't have to pay again on their website. 30 revising and editing checklists, and 30 authentic assessments and rubrics. So you really would be set. You would get everything you need to introduce, practice, reinforce, revise and edit, and assess every single skill for the entire year. And I know some of you already have a grammar curriculum that you use, which is great. You could maybe still use some of the resources from that for your day 4 reinforcement lesson, but honestly, you could probably replace a lot of your lessons from your curriculum with these more authentic lessons. You could still maybe use the same skills in your curriculum, but just switch out a lot of the activities to make them more authentic. So I don't think you need to feel bad about switching out some of those things. I think sometimes we feel bound to the curriculum our school gives to you, but just remember, we want to do what's best for our students, and I know that's why you're here, and it's okay to give yourself permission to just let go of some of the resources in your curriculum and try something that you know is going to be more effective and help your students apply grammar in their writing. And definitely reach out if you have any more questions about these curriculums. I would love to answer them for you. So I'm actually blown away by all the positive response I've already received for my curriculums. I only published them in spring of 2021, and so many people have already purchased them and tried them out, and I've just gotten amazing feedback from everybody. So here are some of my favorite testimonials I've received recently. Nicole said, "This was a lifesaver. The grammar lessons and the practice book were kind of all over the place, so I looked on TPT and on a Facebook resource group to try to find something better. These were absolutely perfect. I love all the parts: intro, anchor chart, imitation sentences, boom cards especially, revising and editing, and assessment. Imitation sentences seem to help kids retain the info. Thank you." And then Lisa said, "I just completed my first whole week using this grammar curriculum and I am in love. The lessons were easy to implement and were super clear for students too. I think this is going to make a world of difference for my students this year. Every piece is golden: the Google Slides, the anchor charts, boom cards, revising and editing checklists, the assessments, rubrics. The kids enjoyed every piece. Also, I've never used boom cards before, but these were a hit." So this was just really affirming to get these reviews. My whole goal was to make these curriculums super easy for teachers to implement and for them to be super authentic and meaningful for students to help them apply grammar skills in their writing. So it's just been really encouraging to see that teachers are already finding a lot of success with these curriculums. And again, please reach out if you have any questions. I have a lot more information on my sales page about these curriculums if you'd like to read further on them. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this workshop. I hope that the content was very valuable for you and you feel like there's something you can take away from it and implement in your own classroom. If you have any questions or want to reach out to me at all, you can find me on Teachers Pay Teachers. My store name there is ELA Skill Builder Jen. I also have a website with a blog and freebies. That's elaskillbuilder.com. I also have a sales page there with my grammar curriculums where you can learn more about those and purchase them. And you can also email me at elaskillbuilder@gmail.com. So please reach out if you have anything that you'd like to ask me. I would absolutely love to hear from you. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, and have a great day.